Thank you, Music City Strings. One more round of applause for these fine folks. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome to our Day of Appreciation, Gratitude for Caregivers of Crime Victims. This is a time to recognize the caregivers in law enforcement, the criminal justice system, and elsewhere whose mission is to help victims and their families cope and rebuild their lives. Several of our leaders are here today to salute your work. We'll hear from them in just a few moments. Before I go further, I want to recognize Nathaniel Beaver, the owner of the Bridge Building. Mr. Beaver, thank you for letting us be here today. And also folks from the Infinity Hospitality Group who will be serving refreshments at the end of today's ceremony. Thank you all for allowing us to be here. And now I'd ask you to rise for the presentation of colors by the award-winning MNPD Drill and Ceremony Team, and then please remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance and the singing of our national anthem by Sergeant Shelby Hughes. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glow, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Please remain standing now for the invocation. We welcome Marcia Brown, a member of the police department's chaplain team that provides emotional care to family members grieving the loss of loved ones. Chaplain Brown.
Good morning, and if you would, join me for a moment of prayer. Precious and loving God, I stand in a room full of people with a servant's heart, people who give tirelessly and selflessly. They truly want to help and make humanity better. What does having a servant's heart mean? It means to not only put others' needs ahead of their own, but to serve with the right motivation. A person with a servant's heart values people. They are humble, they listen, they trust, and they care. I thank you, God, that you have called each person here to serve in their capacity. These are not just job positions that are filled. These are jobs to be filled by those who are truly called. Without them, this hard work would not get done. Hearts would not be touched or mended. The people here do not serve for recognition or rewards. They serve because it comes from their hearts. Each person here touches a multitude of lives, restores hope for them, and helps bring healing to those whose hearts have been tragically wounded. God, I ask that you give each person strength, because I know they too become weary, as a servant's heart is not satisfied or fulfilled without giving. A servant will often face great pressure because they are always wanting to do their best to help others, ease others' burdens, and bring justice to the offender. All of this is done often sacrificing the servant's own needs. Sadly, these jobs often receive no words of thanks. So I say to each of you today, thank you. Your efforts and hard work do not go unnoticed. Thank you for answering the call and for doing it with love and compassion. God, I ask that you bless these beautiful servants abundantly and remind them their work is not in vain. May they see their accomplishments in every face they serve. Amen.
I'd like to take a moment to recognize other members of the clergy in the audience today. If you'll be seated, and if the clergy members will continue to stand. Thank you all, chaplains, volunteer chaplains, for everything you do for us every day. And now it's my honor to once again introduce the Music City Strings. Thank you all very much. And now it's my privilege to introduce Mayor John Cooper. From his swearing in of nearly 400 new police officers, to helping us acquire state-of-the-art technology, to funding our victim intervention and counseling programs, Mayor Cooper has been a strong partner as our police department works to enhance public safety across all of Nashville. Please join me in welcoming Mayor John Cooper.
Well, it's wonderful to be back again this year, and thank you, Music City Strings. That's so inspirational. And I want to thank the next speakers that you're going to hear. Each one is helping make Nashville a much better place. And if I can for a moment, just looking at the river, just to remember the role that the river has had in Nashville. It was in 1780, right there, that Nashville was founded. By 1783, we were formed as Davidson County, North Carolina. We founded Tennessee from right here. My predecessor, that first official in 1783, was paid in bear meat. And they carefully weighed how many bones could be in a hundredweight of bear meat. Andrew Jackson was sent to Nashville as an official of North Carolina. And then ultimately we here created the state of Tennessee. Kind of surprising if you read today's headlines, what came first. But we're here to celebrate our community, and we're here to thank the caregivers of crime victims. Now, what do we mean by that? Nobody asks or expects to be a target of crime, but the sad reality is it can happen to anyone at any time. And thankfully, though, this community is here for our neighbors when the worst strikes. And we can't thank you enough. I can't thank you enough. The citizens of Nashville can't thank you enough. But I do want to thank a few in particular, a few leadership members, and then everybody else here that you're going to hear from, Chief Drake and Chief Swan, General Funk, Director Lance, Verna Wyatt. Thank you. Now, Dr. King once said, life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? What are you doing for others? But each day, each of you has an answer for that, because you wake up and you help others. You answer that question with action. And whether you're responding directly to the crime scene or helping those involved heal from the aftermath, you're helping our neighbors get through the darkest and hardest of times. Now, we have all internationally, globally, seen the response of Nashville on our worst day, March 27th, when 6 precious lives were taken senselessly from us at Covenant. On our worst day, your light shone through. When humanity hit its lowest point, you were reminders of the good in the world. And I can't thank you enough for that. Each of you is a hero, working behind the scenes often to support our neighbors who have experienced unimaginable trauma. Now, you may feel your efforts are often not completely recognized, but let me tell you, your dedication, compassion, and commitment to our neighbors is inspiring us in Nashville and, frankly, around the world. Your job is a hard one, but it's an essential one. You offer a safe space where victims can heal physically and emotionally, and you bring hope to those that need it most when they need it most. That is the background of our community. So knowing that you are here supporting and advocating for our neighbors is an inspiration to us all. It is a privilege to be here with you. My thanks for all of you in what you do for devoting your labor to Nashville, for uplifting her citizens, for your never-ending patience and commitment to creating a better and safer community. I'm here to offer the thanks of a grateful city. And maybe recognition in the best way is the recognition from people who really know what you do, who really appreciate what you do. And that it's not glamorous, and it is difficult. And with the complete sincerity of all of us who get to see and admire your incredible work, thank you.
Chief John Drake is a Nashville native who just last month celebrated his 35th anniversary with this police department. It was Chief Drake who had the idea for a ceremony like this, which reflects his true concern for the persons impacted by crime and those who work to help them. Please join me in welcoming Chief John Drake.
Good morning, everyone. It's good to see you all here today for our second annual ceremony for appreciation of caregivers for crime victims. It's fitting that we recognize members today, especially with the start of Victims' Crime Week starting Sunday. I want to thank the Music City Strings for that beautiful music, for our drill and ceremony team who volunteers their time, but are national champions and dedicated to the cause. I want to thank Mayor Cooper. Thank you for always being there for us, Thank you for being invested in our city at a time that we needed leadership the most. You were there. Thank you to Diane Lance, my friend, when I first went over to domestic violence, the first ever male captain, and I wasn't sure how I'd be received. You were there, open arms, and have been a friend ever since, and been in the fight for every victim in this city. Thank you for what you do. To General Funk, thank you for your investment and your dedication to prosecuting and holding those accountable, and the ADAs who are there to hold people accountable as well, and for your investment in this city. And to Chief Swan, my brother who I talk to even when we don't talk about work, we talk. So it's good to have you here. And Verna Wyatt, thank you for all you do. Tennessee Voices for Victims. Victims do have a voice, and I truly appreciate what you do. Recently, we had the incident at Covenant, and it was a dark day for our city, but it was also a time for light to shine. The light to shine of people, our men and women who went in without hesitation. Scores, you hear of a few, but there were scores and many more who went in not thinking about their loved ones, their kids, their wives, their husbands, but they went in to try to make this a safe environment. And so for the members who responded, they all are here. Will you please give them, not just the officers, but everyone else, a round of applause. Thank you for what you do every day. I'm humbled knowing that this audience is made up of unsung heroes in our criminal justice system. You are the persons who are helping victims and their families through unthinkable trauma and continue to be there for them months and years after incidents happen. You are the persons counseling children who have been subjected to physical and sexual abuse. You are helping those victims understand that there really are adults who care about them, who care about their safety, and who care about their protection. You are the persons who counsel the victims of domestic violence. You are helping them, show them a way out of abusive relationships, and that love should not physically hurt. In planning for our annual Day of Appreciation, I told my team I just wanted to pause and make this event about each of you. Please give yourselves a round of applause. I'm in awe of the work being done by advocates and counselors throughout the system, especially those in the police department. When I had the opportunity as chief to recognize those who are really the ones you never hear about, you don't really see, but they are the ones that make this happen day in and day out. The ones who never get the credit, who responded to Covenant, who rode buses with children for their safety, to calm them down, who went to the reunification site, or who deal with people each and every day. I see Dawn Harper, and I know you didn't want me to call your name, but she has a love for a passion for helping kids that are physically and sexually abused. And I latched on to her from the very beginning, and I've done absolutely anything I can to help the Nashville Children's Alliance, and thank you for what you do. During 2022 and so far this year, advocates in our family intervention program have provided services to 1,197 victims of crime. Those services include advocacy, case management, court support, referrals, and interpretation. We have provided services to crime victims who spoke a number of languages other than English, including Spanish, Arabic, Burmese, Karen, Kinyarwanda, Kamanji, Nepali, Swahili, Turkish, and yes, there are a few others. We also provided extensive outreach to our new neighbors upon their arrival from Afghanistan and the Ukraine. Some of us see that as people are leaving their countries and their cities, but I see it as they're leaving their home, and they're leaving their loved ones, and they're leaving things that they cherish the most. And who are there to help them? You all. You are, again, helping people because they need you the most in a very dark time in their life. So thank you. When it comes to counseling, our police department team has provided 6,914 therapy sessions over the past 15 months, 1,540 of those this year alone. Yours is a special calling to help those in need through horrible and dark times. Your passion for this work is amazing and inspiring, and you are making a tremendous difference. Our police department is grounded in 3 core pillars: organizational excellence, being at our best each and every day, each and every time we come in contact with someone, each and every time we have a situation, and at every level we train and prepare to be the best in every situation, and not just a few weeks ago, but in everything we do. We're a national model in how we help crime victims, and that's because of you all. So thank you for that, and thank you for being a part of the organizational excellence. Community engagement is number 2, getting to know people and people getting to know us. When people see the uniform, they don't see that we're people, that we love, that we laugh, that we cry, that we have families, and that we hurt just like everyone else. And building those communications, building that engagement to help make Nashville a safer and better place. And then we have precision policing. We didn't want to go in and over-police and oversaturate neighborhoods. We wanted a do-no-harm approach in identifying those or committing those harms and doing something with them. Knowing arrest is not the only answer, but working with everyone else to try to make a difference and make our city safer. And this formula is working. I've recently went to Detroit and was able to talk about our police department, our city, not just our police department, but our city. And people are truly, truly interested in what we're doing here and interested in what you're doing, and you're making a tremendous difference. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you, thank you, and thank you. I'm truly grateful for all that you're doing. Thank you.
Nashville Fire Department Director Chief Will Swan was appointed chief in 2018 and is a 27-year veteran of the Nashville Fire Department. He leads a team of 1,300 first responders. They are the caregivers who victims often see first on the scenes of tragic events. Ladies and gentlemen, Chief Will Swan.
So good morning, everybody. What a beautiful day that we have. I was just admiring the backdrop. I think it's really setting this backdrop to be this way as we talk about the subject matter today. And I am very honored to be here. I'm very appreciative. We have such honorable speakers that some have went before me and many will go after me, but I'm just very appreciative. I told the chaplain her prayer actually stole my speech, but we're gonna make this happen. I am, again, in our work, it's absolutely true. We're normally the first ones to encounter individuals that have some horrific incident that's taken place in their life. But as I look in this room, I see a variety of different backgrounds. But you all have in common, or what we all have in common, is a heart to provide care to people in need. Caregivers help perform and help provide basic tasks for people who are physically and mentally disabled due to some type of traumatic circumstance. And there will likely come a time in our lives when we will know someone or have a loved one that needs help, such as a spouse, a brother or sister, a parent, a child, or a grandparent. But caregivers, you are selfless people who sacrifice your time to take care of families in the same turn of being away from your family. You help families in a way that you can't even imagine. You're such a blessing, and we are really extremely lucky to have such caring people. You make it look easy, but we know it's not easy to care for someone, especially when they are struggling with issues or they just may be difficult to deal with. As caregivers, you allow families to be able to sleep at night. You give them a chance to be as normal as possible, because we know that life just doesn't stop because you have a family emergency. What you do is important. Like others before me, and even after me, that we talk about the things that you provide for families, and we talk about the care that you provide. But now I want to just focus on you. I'm sure everyone in this room knows the definition of gratitude. Gratitude, the state of being grateful. Gratitude is a great stress reduction technique for caregivers. It's simple, but truly an effective way to combat stress. Studies have shown that practicing gratitude can help make you happier, lower your stress, protect you from depression, help you sleep better, boost your immune system, and improve relationships. Gratitude is about noticing what's positive in your life, no matter how dark things may seem. So here's a little warning. Take care of yourself. Try to find that balance so that you can sustain and have longevity in this field. You're good at what you do. It's your calling. This is what you signed up for. You have a gift, and you're a caregiver by nature. That's who you are at your very core. But remember, that may not be the core of your loved ones. Your significant others, your wife, husband, your children. So, as you take care of others, make sure you are intentional about caring for yourself and your families. Because it's easy to get lost in this field. You have such a desire to help others, you neglect to take care of yourself and your family. And that's not balance. That's a recipe for disaster. So I'm going to ask you to do me a favor and make me a promise. When you leave here today and you go back to your respective places, take time out to show love to your family. Your family. By spending quality time with them, showing them how much you appreciate them. As we in this professional field that we're in, we can get so wrapped up and tied up, and everything can become a ball of yarn. But I want you to show appreciation to your family to the point that when your family hears your name or sees your face, you put a smile on their heart. The same way as you do for people you take care of. Then last, I want you to promise me to focus on you. Make sure you're carving a little time out for self-care. Whatever that means. If it's working out, if it's reading a book, or something that we all can do, improve our relationship with God. Invest in yourself and take care of yourself. We've all have our own experiences. We've all have dealt with individual things, but you have to take care of yourself and you have to show love to your family. Don't lose that. So I pray that God will continue to be good to you and give you good health, both mental and physical, so that you can continue to do this great work that you've started. Thank you.
Nashville District Attorney Glenn Funk was first elected in 2014 to lead the prosecution of cases in Nashville's criminal and general sessions courts and hold persons accountable. A number of advocates are part of the district attorney's office to help victims in the navigation of the sometimes very complicated legal process. Please welcome District Attorney Glenn Funk.
Thank you, Don. 25 years ago, I got to hear former First Lady Rosalind Carter speak at Vanderbilt. And the topic of her conversation that day was giving care to caregivers. And her conversation that day extended beyond caregivers for victims of crime. It was about a wife who had become the caregiver of someone who was of a husband who was suffering dementia, and how pointing out to us that, that wife might feel guilty if she even went to the store to buy herself something, because she would feel guilty that she was somehow neglecting, even for an hour, the husband who needed her care. She talked about families with children with special needs and how sometimes the entire family dynamic, the parents or the siblings, would not care enough for themselves because it would revolve around the child with special needs. But she also did spend some time talking about the caregivers for victims of crime, especially violent crime, and how too often the supports were not in place for the folks that give care to the victims of violent crime. I lead an office that has 70 assistant district attorneys. We have the highest caseload per assistant district attorney of any office in the state, especially when it comes to violent crime. By contrast, Memphis has 115 assistant district attorneys. We also have 20 victim witness coordinators, and their job as victim witness coordinators in our office is to provide relentless support for victims of crime. That's their whole focus. It's not about how are we handling the case. It's about making sure they know what's going to happen in the case, when their next court date is, and helping them connect to victim services. Every person that comes into our office as a victim of crime, our job, whether we're assistant DAs or victim witness coordinators or criminal investigators, is to ask them two main questions. How are you hurt, and what do you need? Because while, the book on being a DA is to hold the offenders accountable, I think it is just as important, probably more important, is to support victims. And that's part of our main calling as a district attorney's office. And it's tough work because you suffer vicarious trauma in helping these people that you've had to ask those two questions to. But there's also members of our office that are threatened with violent crime, even sometimes sexual violence, by defendants who we are prosecuting. But we treat every victim who has had to come to our office for service as an opportunity for ministry, but it does take a toll on the members of the district attorney's office. Somebody asked me, what's the hardest part of my job? The hardest part of my job is actually trying to keep a finger on the pulse of the staff in my office, because I have to make sure that they are healthy mentally and physically in order to make sure that we are able to fulfill our responsibilities. Our city, I am so proud to live in Nashville. There are 32 district attorneys elected district attorneys across the state. Every one of them has problems in not having enough victim witness coordinators. Some of the jurisdictions only have one for their entire judicial district. Nashville has 20. It's a state responsibility. We're a constitutional office. But of our 20 victim witness coordinators, the metro government funds 80% of those. We are so lucky to be a community where our city has put that much effort into making sure that victims are served. And I thank the mayor, and I thank every previous mayor, all the way back to Mayor Fulton, who has made sure that our office has those resources. Beyond that, our city has demonstrated a commitment to victims. The Office of Family Safety, headed by Director Lance, who we're going to hear from in a minute. We've also built, under her leadership, the best family safety center in the whole nation. And we even have an adjunct facility there in the courthouse to provide victim services there in the actual courthouse. Obviously, we know we've got the best police department and the best fire department in the country, and that's been on display not just in the last couple of weeks, but forever. We've got great state and federal partners as well. But we also have wonderful caregivers that are parts of nonprofits. I'm not going to name all of our nonprofits. I couldn't name all of our nonprofits, but I have been fortunate enough to serve on the board of the YWCA. I served on that board for 6 years before rolling off. They have a large and supportive domestic violence family shelter, which provides housing, child care, job support, treatment to victims of domestic violence. Our Nashville Children's Alliance, led by Dawn Harper, is amazing in helping children who've been the victims of physical or sexual violence. And I've been proud to serve on that board for 9 years. You Have the Power is one of the very first victims' rights organizations in the state, led by Andrea Conti and Kathy Gurley, and they've done amazing work throughout our community for many, many years. Tennessee Voices for Victims. It's an organization that I served on the board for 8 years before recently rolling off. And we're going to hear from their founder and leader, Verna Wyatt, here in a few minutes. One of the things Tennessee Voices for Victims got involved in, unfortunately, during my time as district attorney, I've been the DA while we've had 3 mass shootings in our city in the last 9 years. Burnett Chapel Church of Christ, where should we feel safe? In our house of worship, surely to goodness, and yet they were the victim of a mass shooting. Only a year later, Waffle House in Antioch had a mass shooting event. And now we've had Covenant. We also had before that a bombing downtown that fortunately nobody died, but could have been a real mass casualty event. Sharon Robeson, head of YWCA, happens to come in right as I was talking about him. Good to see you, Sharon. But one of the things that's amazing about the work that Verna Wyatt and Valerie Craig have done is they put together a planning event to have a coordinated response to a mass casualty event. I'm a very tiny part of that as far as the notification procedures. But it really helps to make sure that victims get support instantly and that people are ready to spring into action and people know who's supposed to be where and do what. And I think that their response and the police department's response is really serving as a blueprint for how other communities can have this pre-planning in place to where when a mass casualty event happens anywhere in the country, a proper response is given by the community. So, number one, I want to echo what Chief Swan said about making sure that caregivers think about themselves, number two, and make sure that you get your self-care that you desperately need. I also want to say thank you, because the first part of care for caregivers is to know that you're noticed and that you're appreciated and that you're valued. And I also want to rededicate myself and my office to providing that care to the caregivers in our community who have been relentlessly supporting victims and helping those victims be as healthy as they can be going forward. And so I thank you. And I also want to make sure that you know that my office door is always open. And if there is any way that the Office of the District Attorney can support you better, you might have some ideas today and call me this afternoon, or it might be that some situation in the future comes up and thinks, well, I wish the DA's office could do this or that, or dedicate a resource here or there. Please contact me, because I want to continue to do the work that we've been doing and do it even better in the future. Thank you.
Diane Lance is the director of Nashville's Office of Family Safety and oversees operations of our city's Family Safety Center, which opened in 2019 as the nation's largest and most comprehensive provider of services to victims of domestic violence, sexual assault, human trafficking, and child abuse. Diane has worked for years to help victims, both in her current role and as a former prosecutor in the Davidson County District Attorney's Office. Ladies and gentlemen, Diane Lance.
Well, I also appreciate being asked to speak again at this event. It's just not often we get to see all the amazing people we work with come together and really think about and appreciate the work that happens amongst us as a whole. And I think it speaks a lot to the amazing and expansive heart of our police department in this city that we even have an event like this. This is really a rare occurrence, and I'm really honored to be a part of it today. Last year, when I spoke, I told a story, which I won't tell again, but it's leading to something else, about how 30 years ago I was attacked in Percy Warner Park, leaving me with a bunch of bruises on kind of my side. And I talked a lot about how being a victim can stay with you in many ways. It can stay with you in the obvious ways, and it can stay with you in really hidden and unexpected ways. The obvious ways for me were, like, I know exactly where I was hit with the stick. I remember what the bruise looked like. I remember how my dog rushed to my side and things like that. The hidden ways were really just that. They were hidden. They're the unconscious things that I changed without even realizing it. And what I spoke of that day was unconsciously avoiding that trail at the park for 30 years. I just kept turning the other way without thinking much about it. So now, a year after telling that story to many of you, a new layer was added over the course of this past year, because a lot of my friends in this room, police friends, non-police friends, offered to walk that trail with me as they've seen me over the course of the year. They've stopped and said, hey, I remember when you said that. I'll walk that trail with you if you want to. And that's the essence of what we're really here for today, to be grateful for people like each of you that walk with others on their trail, so they don't have to walk through their crisis, their victimization alone. And that's a really big deal. And in the walking, or even the asking, like I received, the experience itself gets changed. The experience improves, even 30 years later, just the actual substance of it. So whether you're a police officer, an advocate, a therapist, a prosecutor, a firefighter, a faith leader, you fundamentally change the actual crisis experience for those that you help. It's a really big deal. By walking with them in their pain, in their shock, in their grief, in their fear, in their trauma, and in their despair. And as we've seen in the last 3 weeks, it is not easy to walk with people in crisis, especially with Covenant, where every parent, every teacher, every community member's worst nightmare came to fruition. The Covenant shooting had so many first responder heroes, I think our entire city was taken aback. And I hope the people of this city continue to celebrate the leadership, the training, the heroism of our police and fire departments. But there was another type of first responder that was behind the scenes that I think what we're here to talk about today. And those are the ones that have stayed with these families and stayed with this community through the shock, the chaos, the trauma, and the profound grief. So in this room, I see friends who are first responders that run to the crisis, and I have friends that are first responders that walk with the crisis. And our city needs both. Every city needs both. And we are fortunate in Nashville to have both. And we don't just have both, we have the best of both. And it's just one of many reasons I love Nashville. And it's so important to have both because as you walk with someone in the nightmare of what has happened in their life, this has been really complicated for me to unpack as I was trying to work on these remarks. So as you walk with people in the nightmare of what has happened in their life, you are inlaying layers of support within the actual crisis. And that changes the very nature of that crisis and that journey. By walking a treacherous path with another, as each of you do, you are embedding into the actual experience that that person in crisis is loved, that they are worthy, that they can and will survive this event, and that they are not alone. Thank you for choosing and remaining in this work through the years. The type of work that each of you do is a type of work that very few have the desire or fortitude to do. And I'm just going to end with thinking back to what you said, Chief Swan, about a call to turn to your families and your friends and those that you love. As a recent widow, I certainly highly recommend doing that because just as you're inlaying into the crisis of those you're working with, your family members and friends and loved ones are doing the same with you. When they just talk to you about some lighthearted thing that has nothing to do with the trauma of your work, they're inlaying positivity into your life and the crises that you respond to. Thank you, everyone, for just the amazing work you do.
Our special guest this morning is Verna Wyatt, co-founder of Tennessee Voices for Victims. Ms. Wyatt's passion for victims comes from personal experience and grief. In 1991, her sister-in-law and best friend, Martha Wyatt, was sexually assaulted and murdered. In 1993, Verna became one of the founding members of You Have the Power, established by former Tennessee First Lady Andrea Conti. There, she gained a reputation for helping victims across our state. It is her 3 decades of advocacy and life experiences that Verna uses even today to help ensure that victims in Nashville and across Tennessee are heard. Ladies and gentlemen, Verna Wyatt.
Glasses on so I can see what I'm doing. Thank you for that introduction. That was was very, very kind. You know, I have such respect for survivors of crime, but I have to tell you, I am constantly in awe of people who work with victims, constantly. So I'm honored to be here with all of you today, and I appreciate this opportunity to share some of my thoughts. You know, I know from my own personal victimization, as well as working with crime victims for 32 years, just how hard it is to climb out of the pit of despair after you've been a victim. But I also know how vitally important it is to have caring professionals around you while you're in that pit and while you're climbing out of it. You know, when my sister-in-law was raped and murdered, my whole world was collapsed. I was crushed. But that tragedy also slapped those rose-colored glasses off of my face that had obscured the reality that crime was really all around me. It's all around all of us. And not only that, now I felt the very deep emotional pain that crime brings. I also started seeing crime everywhere I looked, pain from everything: murder, domestic violence, child abuse, child sex abuse, robbery, kidnapping. And it was maddening for me. Crime wrecking so many innocent lives. So that created in me an urgency to prevent our pain from happening to other people. And it also created in me this need to support victims of crime and to begin speaking out about crime and justice, and I've been doing that ever since. Now today, I work to support victims in our state through Tennessee Voices for Victims, which is an agency that I co-founded with Valerie Craig. Valerie and I have worked together for 20 years serving victims of crime. But this year is a special year for us because this is the 10-year anniversary for Tennessee Voices for Victims, and we're going to have a party, and all of you are invited, and I hope that you'll come. Over these last 10 years, we've shared the victim's perspective with lawmakers, with 2 governors. We've worked on numerous statewide initiatives to address the needs of victims. And we've also created resources that victims and advocates can use. So I'd like to mention a couple of things that we have that you may want to use with your clients. With the support of the DA's conference and OCJP, we produced a video that's housed on our website, and it features judges, law enforcement, district attorneys, victim witness, and victims of crime, because they're the expert on the system and how it works. And it's very complicated, and victims often say they didn't know what to expect next. And the people that are on the video are amazing. Many of you would know the judges and the DAs, and some of you may even know the victims. It was produced by Dimitri Kaladimus, and it's like the interviews are excellent. And so I hope that if you have a chance that you'll have an opportunity to look at it, and maybe it's something that you can share with the victims that you are working with, because it's divided into topics that wherever you are in the system, you can get the information that you need. We also created a resource directory by county that's located on our website, and we printed out victim cards that have the Bill of Rights, the victim's Bill of Rights on one side. The other side has the resource information and a link to our website. We've distributed those cards to law enforcement all across the state so that when they're at the scene of the crime, they have something tangible that they can hand to the victim. I brought some of those cards, and they're out front if you would like to take some of them. In 2018, like Glenn said, our agency responded to the national call for states to better serve victims of mass violence. So we pulled a statewide council together, and it had OCJP, people from the governor's office, from the attorney general's office, all kinds of system partners to create a victim assistance mass violence protocol. That protocol is now complete, and we're working with DAs across the state to help them implement that in every judicial district. And our agency's also been identified to assist communities across the state when they experience a mass violence occurrence. And we've been able to assist with the Nashville bombing and also with the Covenant School tragedy. And I want to tell you, it's an honor to support those incredible advocates and responders who spring into action when such a horrible thing happens in their community. The work you all do supporting victims is important because from crime, a burglary to a murder, it has a trauma impact. And over the years, I've observed that the impact of crime is very similar regardless of the crime. Now, the intensity can be different depending on the type of crime, but most victims of crime experience the same kinds of pain. Every victim experiences grief, fear, frustration with the system usually, and peace of mind is totally shattered with every victimization. And then there's anger. And I want to talk about anger because you usually see it in action. I can personally testify about anger. It takes a lot of work to let go, to process it when it's been caused by crime. So in my situation, I wasn't personally capable of letting go of that kind of pain by myself. In fact, for a long while, I didn't want to let go of the pain and anger because it felt active. In my world of chaos and pain, I couldn't change the reality of the violence that happened to Martha. I couldn't save Martha from that horror. I couldn't bring her back to her husband or to her little boys or to me. But when I felt that anger, it felt good. It felt like I was doing something. Well, I was doing something. I was making myself sick, and it was coloring everything through the lens of bitterness. It took so much energy to finally climb over that hate and bitterness. And every crime victim struggles to do this, and it's a long, hard journey, and unfortunately, not every victim can do it. And so it's really critical for all of you who are seeing the victims, working with the victims, because you are walking that journey with them. So here's an interesting fact that you may not know. For 30 years, through FIP, Davidson County has blessed homicide victims with a homicide loss support group. Davidson County is like a trailblazer for victim services. I've always said if you're going to be a victim of crime, may it happen in Davidson County because of the services that are available. And until recently, Davidson and Shelby counties were the only district in Tennessee that offered homicide loss support groups. And that's such a healing service, and it's so important. So Tennessee Voices for Victims, we're currently working with the DAs in our state to establish a homicide loss support group in every judicial district. It's about time victims across the state have access to that kind of pain. I can personally attest to how important FIP is because I've experienced it. They walk alongside the victims to create a new normal for their life. And I can tell you that my brother-in-law, to this day, 30 years later, he says Amy Griffith literally saved his life. He was nearly insane with grief. And just the whole idea of raising his two little boys without their mother, she was a lifesaver for him, and she was a lifesaver for me. And I've heard hundreds of victims who've accessed their service every year for years say that. And because we have so many healing services at the Family Safety Center, I know that same kind of incredible assistance reaches out to all different types of victimization, and it's really important. The advocates and resources that we have here, they're amazing. There's not enough superlatives to talk about it. And all of us should be really proud of that Family Safety Center because it is a model for the country. And the way the advocates in Davidson County assist domestic violence victims at the Safety Center and at the Gene Crow Center, that should be a template too for the nation. It's just amazing because domestic violence is a very dangerous and complicated crime, and it needs special attention. All of you here today who work to help victims escape danger or reclaim their lives, so often you may not even realize the impact that you're having. And so you're working with these victims, and some of them may be a little bit testy, but several years ago, I did a training at a hospital with Susan Tucker from the DA's office. And after our training, a woman came up to us and she said to Susan, "You probably don't remember me, but you were my advocate when I was in a domestic violence relationship." Susan said, "Oh yes, I remember you." And then the woman went on to thank Susan profusely for all the help that she tried to give her. She apologized for her behavior at the time. She told Susan that even though she resisted her help then and didn't leave that abusive relationship, that later she did leave that relationship, and she gave Susan the credit for giving her courage to do that. So when the woman left, Susan said, "Oh yeah, I remember that woman. How could I forget her? She called me every name in the book. She used profanity-laced words to tell me to butt out of her life," not the word that she used, "and that I was ruining her life and that she hated me." And that's what Susan took from that interaction with that victim. And she would have never known the impact she had on that victim except for that chance meeting that we had. And all of you professionals experience that if you're working with victims, because crime victims are in shock when you meet them. You are meeting them at the very worst time of their life. And so they're not very easy to work with often because of it. And I'd like to say something about our first responders, the police and the fire, and this day of advocate appreciation. I appreciate you so much. You're behind the scenes. You're the brave men and women rushing in while everybody else is rushing out. You're the cavalry, and people don't even recognize that. I have contact with so many victims, and I can tell you that officers who work the cases are long remembered after the case is solved. And so many times, that officer is a hero to those victims, and they probably don't even know that. After the Christmas Day bombing, I spent the week at the bombing site helping FIP support victims as they came to retrieve items that were in their wrecked homes and businesses. And I had a front row seat to see those first responders and the Metro officers in action. It was brutally cold that week, brutally. And those men and women were out in that cold 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, for several weeks. I saw officers go into those devastated buildings that victims were not permitted to go into because it was dangerous. The buildings were deemed very, very dangerous. Time after time, those officers went in that building and risked their own safety to retrieve items that were personal or sentimental or sometimes even valuable. And I will never forget the look on the victims' faces as those officers handed the victim their items. It was like they were giving them a piece of their life back, because that life that they had before is gone. The whole building was totally destroyed, all of the things that they had in the building. And recently, I was also at the Family Assistance Center right after the Covenants shooting, and I witnessed all of the first responders. I witnessed the chaplains. I witnessed the police officers and the emergency responders who were supporting overwrought parents and children in the middle of chaos and fear. And in that, all again, imprinted on my memory is the look of the painful expression on every single person that was working with those victims. It nearly brought me to tears. You'd look in the face and you could see everyone was absorbing the pain of that day, but they were doing a job to make a horrible, awful situation less horrible and less awful for those parents and children. I was so proud to watch every single person that was working there that day. And I know the same thing was happening at that crime scene. And I know that same thing happened when those officers rushed in and stopped that killer from shooting more innocent victims. So I appreciate every one of you first responders. You truly are heroes, every single one of you. I've met hundreds of inspiring survivors over the years, and I can tell you that when a victim becomes a survivor, they become strong in broken places, and they give purpose to their pain, and they become an inspiration and a resource for others. But in most cases, they didn't walk that journey alone to become a survivor. They had support from professionals like all of you, standing by their side, giving them courage to overcome. You all make a difference, even when you don't feel like you do, and you inspire me because you give hope and comfort to people that have lost their hope and desperately need comfort. So on behalf of victims, thank you. Thank you for caring. Law enforcement, thank you for caring. Prosecutors, victim witness, counselors, first responders, thank you for caring for these victims and helping them restore their broken life and to help them find justice. Your job is not easy, but important things are always worth the effort, and you guys always give it. So God bless every single one of you. Thanks.
Well, this concludes the words of appreciation for the wonderful people in our audience today. Would you please stand for the benediction by Chaplain Marcia Brown? After the benediction, we hope you will join us for refreshments right outside the back door. Chaplain Brown.
Let us pray. Dear God, I lift up every person here. God, as they serve those who are left raw and vulnerable, strengthen and empower them to be of service. What better way to show God's love to others by serving? God, I ask that you always give them vision, that they can see the bigger picture of their work. When they help one, in essence, that touch reaches a multitude. God, keep their hearts humble and pure, and to always show love and grace in all that they do. Help them to always be prepared for the calling that lies before them. I ask that you nurture their gifts. What a blessing it is to be called to serve. Proverbs 31:8-9 says, "Speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves, for the rights of all who are destitute. Speak up and judge fairly. Defend the rights of the poor and needy." Thank you and bless you for fulfilling these words of old. Again, I say thank you, and may God bless and keep each and every one of you. Amen.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.